and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup.
And we start with some good news because Hot Springs, Arkansas has enacted an LGBT rights ordinance.
Let's see if they can make it stick. But the Eighth Circuit has delayed justice for same-sex couples in North and South Dakota.
Good news from Omaha, where students at another Catholic high school have stood up for their teacher who was fired for being gay.
New Jersey's ban on so-called conversion therapy for minors withstood a legal challenge that went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court.
The gay businessmen who hosted Ted Cruz, who we told you about, well, they're digging themselves deeper by trashing their gay clientele.
And I remembered something about one of them that's really awful. Gays actually get to participate in a public march in Russia.
This is a good news show. With Ireland set to vote on same-sex marriage on May 22nd in a referendum, Irish gays and lesbians are phoning their grannies to secure their yes votes. We're going to show you one of them.
Actual footage from Ireland. Andy tells you what he thinks is rotten about something rotten on Broadway, and we'll review Chita Rivera in Kander and Ebb's The Visit. But we're going to start with our very special guest, our friend Dr. Christopher Barley, who is a very prominent member of the LGBT community here in New York, medical doctor and philanthropist. And he is just off a plane from Nepal, where he has been doing medical work in the midst of all this earthquake relief, and barely awake at this point because you've been up for God knows how many hours, but coming right here to tell us about what's going on there. Now, you've been involved in Nepal for a long time.
Correct. 12 years in Nepal in terms of actually having facilities and people on the ground working healthcare, education, and trying to advance women. Obviously, these are societies that women are quite second class, if not worse citizens.
And you've built a hospital there, at least one.
One there, and we see about 15,000 patients a year through it, both inpatient and outpatient. And it's an extremely remote part up in the northwest, an area called Humla.
What drew you to Nepal in the first place?
A doctor, actually, who was working at Mother Teresa's clinic in India, in Calcutta, while she was still alive. And we were doing some volunteer work because 20 years ago, a friend and I started our first hospital in an area called Orissa, which is just south of Calcutta on the eastern coast.
And so the earthquake happened when? A few weeks ago?
Saturday noon. So 10 days ago.
And you said immediately, I have to be there?
Well, we weren't able to get any communication to our staff, many of which live in the very poorest areas, and unfortunately in the least well-constructed areas, mud and just sort of other tarps and that sort of thing. They come from hours away to work at our various facilities. We have a women's center that at times can house 100 women at any given time. These are women we've taken out of the sex trade and given them some hope, teach them some trade, and then try to get them back into society. So we didn't know where any of these people were. And we knew our people, if not others, would need incredible amounts of resources of all kinds. We know that the government and the military, hopefully they're not listening to this, have been quite deficient in every way. The governments, particularly in the rural areas, are extremely corrupt.
Yeah, I mean, Nepal, for over a decade has been sort of unable to form a government because of all the conflict there. And that of course, made things really difficult for this. But you have this organization called Chita, which is citta.org. We have it on the screen there. Tell us about that and the kind of work you do with them.
So Chita, the word, is a Sanskrit word, and it is defined many different ways, but mostly it's opening of the heart and soul and looking after others. And so that became what we're going to do, and that's when we built, we'll go back slightly further. When I was a medical student in Washington, D.C., we had one summer where you actually have some time off. Last time as a doctor that you get this kind of time off. In 3 months, I lived in southern India, not in this area, but across. And I fell in love. It's a love-hate relationship, but I fell in love with the Indians, and India itself was quite difficult in those days. And from there, we went and built, my friend built like a one-room clinic. And he was terrible at fundraising, and he was good at a lot of other things. So I started raising money. We expanded. Then there was no schools there in the entire region. And there were schools, but they were washed away by a typhoon 25 years ago now. And they never rebuilt it. And yet the teachers and the principals still get paid the exact same amount, and they sit at home.
Right. So go back to Nepal then.
Yep.
So you have experience there. It's already a poor area. It's already an area where it's hard to deliver health care and people are very impoverished. And then you get off the plane and you see what?
Well, we almost couldn't land because the runways were so chewed up. But we were able to somehow. The first thing I saw was a vast number, a beautiful sight actually, of foreigners, particularly rescue, groups of rescue, men and women from all different countries. You just read it on them. And these are people well trained by other places. Organizing them is another story, but that was going to be the first attack, because they didn't have this there. They didn't have shovels. They didn't have all the stuff that people needed immediately. Many of the buildings are either adobe-like bricks, or if you're a little bit wealthier, slightly nicer bricks. And they're all down, even in Kathmandu. So as we drove in, we couldn't really drive very many places because the roads were just covered, and still are in huge piles. Whole buildings fell down into, it reminded me of 9/11, frankly. And obviously there was nothing quite that tall, but the destruction. And in many third world countries, there's about 50 wires going from one building to another, and they're spliced in, and there's water all over the place. It was very treacherous going and dangerous, and people didn't know what to do.
What happened to the buildings that you built there?
Fortunately, we build them earthquake proof. They're like 2 foot wall thick, 2 feet wall thick, whatever.
2 foot thick walls.
Thank you. And rebars in them and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And, they've had to at times, we have the 2 different sites, but at times, we've lived through 2 other catastrophic natural disasters, actually probably worse than this in India with typhoons, but people will come and live on our buildings. In our buildings, we may have 10,000 people living in them at any given time, and they have to say, if it's raining, they have to save their 1 cow per family. They put them up on the roof. Right. And I pray that it holds up.
So you were there for a while working, for a week, 2 weeks?
Yeah, 8 days or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are people surviving? Are they dying of related diseases after this disaster? Sure. What's going on?
Right now, they have not really got much further than 60 kilometers. They're getting helicopters to go into some of these mountain regions where there's whole villages that have just fallen off the side of mountains. The best they can count from people saying who was where is 7,000, 8,000. Anyone you really speak to who's lived there a long time puts it up around 50 to 100,000.
50 to 100,000 dead?
Mm-hmm. they can't find anyone. They're under massive.
Well, they're showing
rubble.
whole villages that are just completely wiped out
Completely
by
wiped out,
avalanches.
yeah. One of the ones I went to, where I would go a lot, and I had a friend there. There was 6 people left, and they don't usually go other places. You know, if they can stay there, they do. They take a chicken coop and sort of turned it into, because it had wood structure, they turned it into where they were going to live. Put a tarp down, and you know, I saw both the reuniting of people who 5 days later thought each other were dead, to helping pull out the one that's dead.
So, you know, it must be culture shock enough in good times going back and forth to a country with a lot of poverty and lack of services to here. When you're now going from what is a total horrible disaster to this, it must be very difficult to.
It is, and even without, as you say, without the disaster, it's, you know, you get on the plane and people are, can I say bitching?
Yes.
People are bitching about things that are so irrelevant, and you know, people complaining about every little thing and the taste of that, and you come back to New York or wherever you're going to go, and you do kind of forget it, but I've been so many times it's hard to forget. And for me as a doctor, you know, I walk the halls of my own hospital, taking care of people, bringing around teams of people, and patients want and expect everything done kind of like a hotel. Obviously the medical part, yes, but we've found that when the family's involved, and we've put in several things that I think are far better than Americans, and someone has to feed every meal, someone has to clean the person, wash the clothes, and everything involved that they can do that way. And the family then gets very involved and understands and is comfortable with things. And they leave easily days earlier.
We have a picture, I don't know if we've shown it yet during the course of this interview, because we've been listening to you, but of you doing your medical work over there. Maybe we can get that up on the screen. There you are. What's going on there?
This was interesting. There was a whole group of people who, this is on day 5, and they thought it was just, I was going to be cleaning up a wound. And I said, this wound is too big and there's something underneath there. And the doctor said, no, no, no. I said, and it one after the next. And I realized that some surgeon went through there, rightfully so, very early, and put in the deepest, hardest stitch to get out, several of them, foreheads and all different parts of the people. And I was feeling a little woozy myself, having to take all the scab and everything off, and she didn't flinch. This is how tough these people are, because the sutures had to come out, and they never told her. She thought it would just stay there forever. So there was a whole series of those. And that actually was in the chicken coop I spoke about. It's the only place that was left standing.
So to finish off, what is the thing you most want Americans and others listening to this telecast to understand about what's going on there and what needs to be done?
Well, I think the first thing is to clearly keep it in the headlines and not let some other stories, you know, at least put, I know there's going to be plenty of other stories, but not push it aside, not put it on page 17 and then kind of disappear. Because the next coming 3, 4, 5 weeks is when the monsoons start coming and the heavy, heavy torrential rains, mud. With all that comes cholera, all forms of dysentery, malaria in the lower parts, very, very, very deadly things, and everyone in one area, and everyone not having any sewer system, water, et cetera. It's going to be a mess if it's not handled right.
Well, people can learn more by going to your website, chita.org, C-I-T-T-A. And, you know, I want to say thank you for your work. It seems inadequate and whatever, but thank you for coming here to give us a little insight into what's happening And
it will put the rest of our problems in perspective.
it's a little hard to go on with the show with the rest of the news
But we thank
after
you.
hearing this. But
Okay.
thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you, Christopher, for
Thank
coming
you.
in. And
Goodbye.
goodbye.
Namaste.
See you get some rest.
Namaste.
Yeah.
Namaste.
Okay. Well, on with the news.
Back to the domestic front.
Yeah, from Nepal to Arkansas.
Yeah, well, Hot Springs. Isn't that Bill Clinton's old stomping grounds?
Well, it's not Hope, but yes.
no,
he,
didn't he? But no, but didn't he? Wasn't he raised
Yes,
around there?
yes.
I know he's a man from Hope.
Yes.
Anyway, this is the state where they passed a statewide bill that said you can't pass anything that goes beyond the state level in terms of coverage for civil rights. And a little bit more about that later. But they did pass an inclusive non-discrimination ordinance that covers sexual orientation and gender identity. It covers city employees and vendors. And of course, last week we told you that even the governor is sort of interested in this idea. Well, we got gays in the hate crimes bill, so maybe this is okay.
Yeah, and Little Rock, we told you last week, had passed a similar law. So this may be a little developing cascade of ways to deal with
they
this.
hadn't even been working on many of these laws before the pushback from the right wing.
It's almost like civil disobedience.
All right.
All right, to catch you up on a little marriage news, the 8th Circuit
That's
federal
North Dakota,
court-
South Dakota, Nebraska, Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, and Arkansas.
So they had some same-sex marriage cases pending that had not been resolved in the 8th Circuit.
And they have many states that already have same-sex marriage there.
Yes, but they were sort of waiting for the Supreme Court oral arguments to proceed. Well, the 8th Circuit has now announced that it is canceling the oral arguments that had been scheduled on same-sex marriage, and they're just going to completely wait for the Supreme Court decision in June.
Justice denied.
Well, in Alabama, our friend Judge Grenade is not waiting. She is moving ahead on the marriage cases there. She had legalized same-sex marriage, but then they went back and forth about whether it was just for one couple or just one area.
The state rule, the state courts ruled, the federal courts ruled.
Yeah.
But they're not wasting any time in the Alabama House. They passed a bill, and the Senate is having a hearing on giving judges and officials the right to refuse to perform same-sex marriage. These are civil officials.
Yeah, meanwhile in Texas, they're trying to advance a bill that would exempt judges and clergy members from performing same-sex marriage. Now, judges, in fact, are not required to perform all marriages.
Well, if a judge keeps doing heterosexual marriages, then it becomes an issue.
Well, it may become an issue, but I know judges in New York, for instance, can pick and choose who they marry.
But if they go ahead and marry straight couples and they start refusing
they could be
gay
open to the
couples,
charge that
yes,
they are
that they're discriminating.
But if they don't announce
Some
it,
of them have gotten out of the marriage business as a result.
Exactly. Meanwhile, there is continuing discussion of the oral arguments at the Supreme Court last week, specifically on this question of the history of legal same-sex relationships.
Justice Kennedy, who we are relying on to come through for us on this, is the one who raised the whole issue. This has been the same, marriage has been the same for millennia plus time, he said, which is, ridiculous. So our side didn't say, come on.
It's not entirely true.
And I'm sure that was a conscious decision not to get into an argument about the fact.
Exactly.
No, I mean, some of the judges were bringing things up. Well, the ancient Greeks had this whole lot of homosexuality. They didn't have no same-sex marriage. Well, there were certain kinds of codifications of gay relationships for rich people.
Well, and now pieces are being written about, well, there actually were same-sex marriages legally in the Sudan. And
Native Americans, etc. We'll go on and on and on and on. And of course, gay relationships have existed from all time.
But it's interesting that the question remains open. I would have liked a more erudite discussion of that, but I recognize that they had a limited amount of time and they didn't want to muddy the waters.
Now, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, who was a closeted U.S. Senator, he accepts
South Carolina.
He accepts reality. He says if the Supreme Court rules our way, he doesn't see how 3/4 of the states would ever adopt a constitutional amendment to ban it. He says it'll be time to move forward and come out. No, and he didn't say the last part.
Nice try.
But he did say it's time to move forward.
But
Come on, America.
In South Carolina, Lindsey Graham's home state, in Columbia, there's a little scandal developing, or a little controversy anyway, over a local council member, a guy named Cameron Runyon. He ran for council as basically a progressive, asked for LGBT money and support, and then he got dehydrated at some event. He was running a race or something. He got severe dehydration. And he found Jesus.
Oh, I see. What did Jesus tell him to do?
Jesus told him to be bad to gay people.
Oh, that's not what. I don't think you can scan your Bible.
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to find anything Jesus saying anything about it.
He may just have been on a beach. He was on vacation. He got dehydrated. So now he's turned to Jesus and.
Well, when he got rehydrated, did he get any better?
No. He had been pushing a study of a new human rights ordinance, and they'd hired a lesbian consultant to write this ordinance, and now she's gone because he's screwed over the whole thing.
Stop worshiping false gods. To finish up on the national picture on same-sex marriage, NBC, Wall Street Journal poll says 3/5 of Americans want the Supreme Court to end the bans on same-sex marriage nationwide.
Okay.
Oh, and in Louisiana, the House there, without dissent, urged Justices Elena Kagan and Ruth Bader Ginsburg to recuse themselves for engaging in public conduct suggestive of bias in the same-sex marriage case, because they've done same-sex marriages. How about banning all the Catholics on the court from ruling, since they belong to a religion that speaks out against this? Didn't the Pope say something else about it this week? You told me. So.
Yeah, I can't remember the word he used. Something about.
It was bad, though.
Yeah, anything other than opposite-sex marriage was a disgusting turn in marriage or something. But Scalia has been just as biased in his statements about marriage against it. So
and yet
I don't think you can.
One commentator was saying
recusal.
Maybe we'll get a 9-0 decision.
No.
You think that's foolishness?
No, I do think it's foolishness. I think
that's what they said about Brown v. Board of Education, and they got it.
Well, this is 2015, and we ain't going to get it like that. Here's the thing. People say, look, it should be seen as a conservative issue. They should be behind it. The logic is, why in the world would anyone have a problem with two people of the same sex marrying? But clearly people do have a problem with it, and you're not changing their minds, and especially if their names are Scalia, Alito, Thomas, and Roberts. So, maybe Roberts if he's ambitious enough to end up on that side of history, but I wouldn't hold out for it.
All right.
Maybe. Ted Cruz, on the other hand, continues to be a monster, and there are further developments in the story of the gay hotel owners who hosted a dinner for him.
This is Ian Reisner and Maddie Wiederpass.
Yeah.
Now, in addition to hosting that welcoming thing for Ted Cruz, Ian did a fundraiser for Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, who was totally anti-gay. Yeah. So most of us have said, why would anybody want to patronize gay businesses? And they own an empire of gay businesses on Fire Island and in New York and maybe elsewhere.
They've just bought the Fire Island
where
properties.
The profits go to benefit anti-gay candidates.
Right.
Most people get this. Somebody wrote to me and said, there's this you're spending all this time on this and you're organizing around this. I said, nobody's organizing around it. People read the stories and they say, I wouldn't want to go to a place like that if that's where the money is going.
Well, I was reminded, actually, by you of who this Ian Reisner is, because I, unlike you, am a devoted Bravo fan and watch a lot of the Bravo shows.
Bravo to you.
Not necessarily. I'm not taking any credit for that. We all have our vices. But one of the shows is this $1 Million Listing show, which is the continuing adventures of 3 real estate brokers in New York City. There's also a West Coast version. And one of the brokers in New York is this young Latino guy, Puerto Rican, Luis. And Luis is a peppy, optimistic, up-and-coming broker who's ambitious and works very hard to be a success as a broker. So on last year's series, Luis encounters Ian Reisner. I had forgotten about this. But what I had not forgotten is what a complete monster Ian Reisner was on this show. Now you don't watch this specifically because you know what ugly stuff happens on these reality shows. This was above and beyond. Ian Reisner specifically, deliberately humiliated Luis for several episodes. And I, at the time, and I watched this stuff, there's very little I won't watch in this stuff, but I was appalled. I couldn't believe they put this stuff on television. It was so horrible.
Well, he was doing all these anti-Latino mocking him.
He kept calling him Ricky Ricardo, but it wasn't just that. It wasn't just the racist humiliation that was deliberate and done publicly on camera and done to humiliate him. He stole half his commission. He lied to him. He put him through the ringer. He just ran him around for no good reason. It was unbelievable how he tortured this guy.
So Ian isn't just putting Luis down. He's putting you down. They did an interview with New York Magazine to try to save face and tell the real story and blah, 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 blah. What a disaster. I don't know. I mean, I do know who's advising them. This guy, Corey something.
Corey Hay?
Hey, yeah.
He's a publicist.
Yes, he's the publicist advising them.
No, I mean, he's someone who, he's a gossip columnist.
No, but he is advising them. He'd been hired by them to, I believe.
He's never been a progressive. He hangs out with
Well, they totally hang out with right-wingers. So in this interview where they're trying to save themselves, they, in the course of the interview, say, oh, you try running a gay business. Gays are cheap. They don't want to pay for drinks. They want comps. This is their entire clientele for these businesses, and they're calling people cheap. They're calling you cheap. Why would you want to go into any of their businesses? So even the Out Professionals canceled a benefit at one of their things on Fire Island.
And there's this whole ex post facto attempt to redefine this. Oh, we should be meeting with these Republicans. They weren't meeting with him. They were there to suck up to him on the subject of Israel. They wanted to get some reflected glory and power from him.
And then I've gotten pushback on Facebook because I posted quite a bit about this. Go to my Facebook page, become my friend, go to Gay USA's Facebook page and join that too. And people say things like that to me. Well, Israel is very important to them. I said, fine. But if you're saying gay rights is a tertiary or secondary issue or it just doesn't matter, then don't expect me to patronize your businesses.
I have to say that disgusting as I think they are on the subject of not standing up for gay rights with Ted Cruz, that is a tertiary issue to me. The fact that they would hang out in a slobbering way with Ted Cruz, who is a monster right-winger on so many subjects, is disgusting.
Correct. Done. You're done. Stick a fork in him. Okay.
I hope so.
All right. Other news. Well,
The Supreme Court has, in a good move, denied review of a New Jersey ban on conversion therapy for minors. They were asked to look that over, and they said, no, it stands. It's good.
But in a bad move, they also refused to hear the appeal of a Massachusetts inmate who was seeking a transgender inmate who was seeking gender reassignment surgery.
Michelle Koselik. That's gone back and forth in the courts.
And now that's done.
She first won her case in Massachusetts, and then a higher court overturned it, and the Supreme Court has refused to review that. In other transgender rights news, the Department of Labor of the United States has announced a new policy on gender identity in the Job Corps. The Job Corps has 125 sites around the country. They serve 60,000 people aged 16 to 24 every year. They give them education and job training. They're a very important resource for people who don't have normal access to those things. And they have discriminated against transgender young people for years, and the Department of Labor has announced now that they can no longer do that they have to treat people with respect, respect the gender in which they're living their lives, be appropriate with names and pronouns, and that would be a terrific thing.
And Smith College says they want to treat transgender women with more respect. One of the Seven Sisters, an all-women's school, has voted to accept transgender women as students.
Well, this is because 2 years ago they rejected the application of a transgender woman named Calliope Wong because her financial aid form had her male name on it. And they said, oh, well, we can't overlook that. So we're not even taking your application.
But a breakthrough in the New York State Senate, they haven't passed GENDA, which the Assembly has, which is the Gender Expression Non-Discrimination Act, but they have honored transgender Carrie Davis of the LGBT Community Center as a woman of distinction, and it's the first such transgender honoree brought forth by our state senator, Brad Hoylman.
Thank you, Brad. And thank you to the Senate of Minnesota, which has defeated an attempted repeal of the trans-friendly high school bathroom bill there. They passed a very progressive law honoring people's identities, and the right wing wanted it repealed, and the Minnesota Senate defeated that effort.
Now in San Francisco, they've started a movement called No Pride for Facebook, hashtag. Drag queens want Facebook banned from pride parades around the country over their real name policy, which they met about, and they thought they made some progress, but it hasn't been repealed.
Yeah. And in even more dire news, the trans angle on the Baltimore riots. Mm-hmm. A trans woman was in a department store shopping. The riots break out. People come in. They're looting, whatever. She's taking video of it. She gets arrested and charged with misdemeanor burglary. They took her to jail. They took away her bra. They put her in the men's part of the jail and kept her for several days. And mistreated her badly.
That's in the context of a riot. We work with transgender clients, obviously, at New Alternatives for Homeless LGBT Youth. They get arrested for walking down the street. They get arrested for prostitution for walking down the street.
Exactly.
Because it's an easy arrest, and who's going to believe them? And yes, they were prostituting. This is
fill the quota.
It's just outrageous.
Well, Miley Cyrus is doing something about that. She started a new thing called the Happy Hippie Foundation, which is going to help trans youth, homeless youth, LGBT youth in general. She got together with Joan Jett and Ariana Grande and did some performances in her backyard called the Backyard Sessions to start fundraising for this. She's very committed to this.
Right. Let's tell our Omaha story, which is really nice. We have film about this. This is taking place at Scott Catholic High School in Omaha, where a teacher. Well, let's go to the videotape on this story, and if we have it, if we can raise it up here. Yes,
a school day at the lake in West Omaha turns into a chance for Scott Catholic students to make a pitch for their teacher. Right now, the popular English teacher will not be coming back next fall. Good evening, I'm Craig DeGrelli.
And I'm Jennifer Griswold. School administrators say Matthew Allage's contract won't be renewed. Today, students made a very visible effort to change that. Reporter Megan Matthews is live with the latest. Megan?
Craig, Jen, Scott students said today they can't force change, but they will inspire it. And they did that with a T-shirt. They walk for a cause. Scott Catholic students by the cluster traipse the trails at Zarinsky Lake. In every bunch, a few white T-shirts.
I just know that this is something that we need to show support for someone who we think something's happening that shouldn't be.
Its message is their peaceful protest to stand up for their openly gay teacher.
The T-shirt says, "I support Mr. Allage."
Even at a school event, dozens of students proudly wore them. Daria Kaboli-Najad sold more than 140 to her classmates.
Again, it's such a small thing, but just that everyone can come together and show their support by a simple T-shirt is really nice.
Scott administrators told English teacher Matt Elledge he would not be invited back to teach next fall because he told staff he's in a gay relationship. High school alumni started a petition on change.org earlier this month to save his job.
All that Let Matthew Teach stuff started trending on Twitter, and we were like we don't want this to be over with yet. And so we came up with this idea.
From anger to inspiration, A t-shirt says it all for these Scott students who say they'll fight for a change.
We can't force a change, but we can inspire a change. And if this can inspire one human being to change their mind on something and impact one person's life sometime, then that's like everybody's goal.
The Archdiocese of Omaha responded to the school's decision earlier this month, releasing a statement saying all elementary and secondary teachers sign one-year contracts. Contracts include a code of conduct in addition to a clause whereby teachers agree to uphold the teachings of the church. It is not clear yet if Mr. Elledge has signed with another school. Reporting near Scott High School, Megan Matthews, KMTV Action 3 News.
The online effort to bring back Matthew Elledge continues to gain support. More than 33,000 people supported the Change.org petition in the first few days. That number is now up to nearly 95,000 people. Petition organizers have now set a new goal of collecting 150,000 signatures. You can find more information on that, plus the latest on Scott's reaction on our website, KMTV.
The young people are very inspirational, but of course, if I'd tried that at Chaminade Boys High School in Long Island, a Catholic boys' school, they would have expelled me right quick. If I tried to stand up for all the gay teachers there, but of course, they didn't come out in those days. They came out later.
Well, what I like about these stories is I don't think we're going to immediately get Mr. Elledge's job saved or change the policies of the Catholic Church, but we radicalized a lot of people who are going to do a lot of great stuff over the years. It's like people said, you know, Queer Nation, you didn't expect to really win against Putin and going up against his gay policies around the Olympics, did you? No, I didn't. But what I expected was to educate a lot of people around the world and motivate them to get involved in whatever.
You can't force change, you can inspire it.
I hope so.
And another new poll to give you. Would you be enthusiastic or comfortable with a gay president? 61% said yes, they would be. 37% no. How about an evangelical president? Only 52% said yes to that one, and 44% said no.
Okay.
We're doing better than the evangelicals. You got that, Mike Huckabee?
Don't count your chickens before they're hatched.
I'm not counting anything in this country.
Well, I'm counting the good works of Airbnb.
Yes.
In Galveston, Texas, a woman advertised a room in her house for rent
nice
on
house.
Airbnb.
I
didn't see the pictures.
Yeah.
So a gay couple.
Veranda, nice views.
Place to move to. A gay couple shows up. They're in town for some event. They've booked the room, and they go to their event, and they come home, and she says,
I thought you had a wife, she says to the guy.
He says, what's the problem? And she says, no, you can't stay here. So Airbnb has canceled her off their site.
Well, she said, I listed this place as straight friendly.
Well, that was in the small print at the bottom.
They have zero tolerance at Airbnb for discrimination.
Okay.
They say.
On the other hand, a shocking story out of Las Vegas where a Walmart refused to. Remember the story of the straight guy who invited his gay best friend to prom?
Jacob Leshensky invited his friend Anthony Martinez. So Anthony's aunt, I guess it is, wants to make a cake for them.
And went to Walmart and wanted put on the cake, you're gay, he's straight, you're going to prom, you couldn't have had a better date. Now, I would have turned that down for being too many words on the cake. But the Walmart clerk and the clerk supervisor said, oh, we can't put gay on a cake. At Walmart in Las Vegas?
Walmart
really?
says, that is not our policy. But, you know, people make it up as they go along at the local level.
They do, and they get scared and defensive as their sort of knee-jerk reaction. It is really depressing. How many times in life, maybe you've had this experience, maybe you haven't, have you approached someone gently so as not to frighten them off with something like this?
Yes, yes.
Many, many, many times.
Well,
so
I wanted to get something inscribed for my boyfriend when I was like 19.
Yes.
And I said, could you put to Keith from Andy on? She goes, Andy? I said, oh, you know, it's a girl's name. I'm doing this for my... I did. All right, I was closeted at one point, okay. But I had to get that thing for Keith.
We've all had our moments.
Yes. But I got it. I got it inscribed.
Yeah, so Walmart management has said this is not their policy. I don't know that they've actually given an apology to anyone.
No.
What the clerks put on the cake, by the way, was "You matter, prom kings." You would think they would think prom kings was inappropriate,
And
too.
to finish up my story, I came out publicly in 1974, and I've never gone back in, so please cut me a break.
The Williams Institute at UCLA is putting together a new blog called LGBT Stats. All the information you want of economics and education and whatever. If you're looking for some hard information, you can now go to LGBT Stats at the Williams Institute.
The Grand Marshals of the New York City Pride Parade have been announced, and they include the great actors Ian McKellen and Derek Jacobi. Unfortunately, of course, they do that show Vicious together, which I think is terrible. I mean, I think they're great actors. I know some of you love it. Don't write me any notes about it.
I can't believe it's still on the air. The other Grand Marshals are J. Christopher Neal, who's an artist and the founder of Fluid by Design, an organization for bisexual or sexually fluid African-American men. And Kasha Jacqueline Nabe, I knew I should write this better.
Ugandan gay leader.
Nabagesera, great Ugandan activist. The theme of Pride this year is Complete the Dream, and the idea of booking a lot of international people is to think beyond marriage.
Yes.
Which I think is admirable.
The Congress failed to stop two bills from becoming law in the District of Columbia, one that protects LGBT students from discrimination, and the other that prohibits employers from discriminating against workers who use contraception or have abortions.
That's good news.
Yes.
And in New York City, in the next few years, we may get something called a National LGBT Museum.
Well, New York City was just chosen as the site. That's the news. There, you can go to nationallgbtmuseum.org if you want to learn about it. And our old friend Kevin Jennings, who used to head GLSEN and worked for the government, federal government.
And is now the executive director of the Arcus Foundation.
Is the co-chair of this effort.
Okay.
They want it open by 2019.
For Stonewall 50.
Yeah, the 50th anniversary.
That's an ambitious agenda.
In Elk River, Minnesota, did we do this? A billboard promoter promoting conversion therapy prompted high school students to protest on the steps of the state capitol saying, gay is okay and can't convert love. But, so again, it brings out the kids who get offended by these things.
Republicans, you're just throwing away the future.
It's National Foster Care Month, and Obama said that potential adoptive parents should not face discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity. Hawaii advanced a bill to allow people to change their gender on birth certificates without undergoing surgery. And I think that's all I have.
International news. Well, the big news coming up is the election coming up in Ireland on May 22nd on marriage equality. Now, ideally, we wish these things were decided as a civil right rather than voted on.
But Irish family law is embedded in the Constitution. So every time they wanted to change anything about divorce or anything else, and we lost a divorce referendum there back in, I think, the 90s.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they have it now. So anyway, they have to go to the people to change this. Now, the polls say 78% of people are supporting this.
But Brian Brown of the National Organization for Marriage is over there speaking out against it.
All parties in political parties in Ireland are supporting the referendum, a yes vote on the referendum. Danny O'Donnell, our Irish American assembly member here in New York, went over there, did some lobbying on it, and he said every cab driver he spoke to said they're going to vote yes. and then, I also talked to my friend Harry Milner, who lives in Tralee down on the West Coast, and he said, look, everybody I talked to was voting for this. He says the problem on these referendum is people don't vote. Yes. He said there was one on protecting children. 30% of the electorate came out. Now that one passed. He said, but 30% came out to vote on it.
Just like the United States of America.
Yeah.
So there are various campaigns to get out the vote on this. And one is a campaign that's happening, being promoted on YouTube. And there's a gay Irish guy named James Mitchell, who is a regular YouTube blogger, sort of. And he
They want you to call your grandmother.
Yes, and ask her to vote for marriage equality. So he did a YouTube video of calling his grandmother to ask her to vote for marriage equality on May 22nd, and here is his video.
I'm so scared about doing this. So scared about doing this. And I don't know why, because my nana's never ever said anything even remotely homophobic or oppressing towards my sexuality once. I think my genuine fear is the problem that I've never actually talked to my nana properly about my sexuality. Yeah, okay, here we go.
You have called is not recognized.
I'll take that as a no. I've just dialed voicemail. My hands are all shaky. I'm really nervous. I don't like this. Okay, I'm gonna try her mobile instead.
Hello?
Hi, Nana.
Hi.
It's James.
How are you, James?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm not too bad.
Are you busy?
No.
Can I talk to you for a few minutes?
You can, of course.
Good, okay. This is something we've never properly talked about, but you know that I'm gay.
Yes.
Yes, you do.
I always knew.
Yeah. And in May, there's a referendum coming up where people are being asked to vote. That affects me very personally.
I know.
I want to make sure that I can marry the person I love, and I want to make sure that any kids that I have in the future are protected by that as well.
Yes.
We're all just phoning our nanas to make sure that they're going to vote yes to marriage equality for us in May, and so that's why I'm calling, just to ask if you will be voting yes for me in May.
You don't need to ask me that question. I have been behind you 100% from the day that you came out.
I know. Thank you.
You know that.
Yeah, I have
always been your number one fan because you're so brave. You know that. And I love you very, very much.
Love you too.
Don't cry.
No, I'm just happy. I promise. I'm just happy, Nana. I'm just really happy. I promise.
But you know that. I love you so much that you're.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, because there's a lot of people right now who are saying that it's a bad thing, and that
Don't mind people. Let them get on with it.
yeah, we just have to make sure that we win it. And yeah, thank you, Nana. Thank you. I love you.
All right, darling.
I love you.
I've always loved you.
I know, and I'll always love you.
Wow, charming and moving.
Exactly.
And all you have to do, folks, is ask sometimes.
Well, that's a very important point. Also in Northern Ireland, an entirely separate area, as you know, the Legislative Assembly there, which is where a vote on same-sex marriage took place, rejected it for the fourth time. So they remain the only place in Great Britain that does not have legal same-sex marriage.
Well, let's get into Russia. When we have some video of this, you can run it, and we'll talk over it if you have it from Mr. Milanov. In St. Petersburg, they have the May Day parade, a very big deal over there. At least especially when it was a communist country. Anyway, there was a big gay contingent in the parade. So Vitaly Milanov, who was the big anti-gay politician over there,
The redhead you saw in the glasses.
tried to stop it as a violation of the gay propaganda law, and the police kept him separate from the protesters.
Shocking.
And you got all these rainbow, for those of you who can't see it on the podcast, you can't see, there's all these rainbow flags and everything there.
Yeah. Now, they've also successfully put on festivals and LGBT film festivals and stuff in St. Petersburg. It remains an issue in Russia, but nice to see those rainbow flags out marching. A couple of other small notes. In Toronto, they held a documentary film festival called Hot Docs, and one of the big hits was this film that's coming, A Sinner in Mecca, by Parvez Sharma, who did a jihad for love a few years ago. He went to Mecca. He's an out gay man, Muslim. He went to Mecca and he secretly filmed it. It is illegal to film these
Yikes!
journeys to Mecca. And he filmed the whole thing, and he occasionally had his equipment stolen and video deleted, and he went right back to filming.
Wow.
I've seen the movie. It's really, really good.
I look forward to it.
I look forward to its distribution. We'll let you know. They had 3 sold-out screenings. He had death threats there. They had to have extra security in Toronto for showing this film.
Well.
It's quite something.
In Serbia, an army major there, a 20-year vet, only identified as Helena, was fired for being transgender. She won her case at the human rights body that's been set up there, but all she's getting is an apology. She's not getting reinstated.
Better than nothing. Strange story out of France. The Prime Minister of Australia, Tony Abbott, who's a little conservative, was flying into France, and the Australian ambassador to France...
Tony Abbott is a right-wing nut.
Okay, there you go. He was going to be met on the tarmac by the Australian ambassador to France, who is openly gay and who has been feted at dinners by Tony Abbott and other things with his partner of 32 years. And his partner was with him on the tarmac to meet him. And the message comes out from the plane: the partner must go wait in the car.
Right.
And the ambassador, to his everlasting credit, said, "The hell with you. He's staying right here." And the Prime Minister gets off the plane and just, grits his teeth and meets them, and life goes on. But it's this strange
he offered to
incident.
resign over it, but then they didn't take his resignation.
Exactly.
All right. In Kenya, Deputy President William Ruto, R-U-T-O, said, "There's no room for homosexuality in this country." This is on the day Secretary Kerry is visiting. So Kerry reaffirmed our commitment to gay rights. Ruto is on trial at the International Criminal Court, for multiple crimes against humanity.
All right, let's move on. We're actually running out of time.
Right.
AIDS news?
Yeah, well, in San Diego, Thomas Miguel Guerra was accused of purposely spreading HIV. He's been given 6 months in jail, which is the maximum sentence for sex for 24 men. He pleaded no contest to the charges.
He was sort of bragging online about infecting people, but really, jail? Sue him civilly. May 17th is the AIDS Walk New York. If you want to participate in that, check it out at GMHC.
Elton John was at a hearing on the Global AIDS Commission, and he said to Lindsey Graham, besides saying that stigma is the #1 problem in the world around AIDS, he said, "I was a drug addict and obsessed and a self-obsessed asshole." I'm sorry for the language. That's what he said, and it was on C-SPAN, until I met Ryan White. And Ryan White turned him around, and he said, love is the answer, basically.
My favorite moment at the subcommittee, although Andy has tried to shortcut me on this.
No,
Lindsey Graham said to Elton John, "What is your biggest fear about the problem of ending the epidemic?" And not only was Elton John there, but Rick Warren of the Saddleback Church was sitting right next to him and saying, we can only end this epidemic by using the churches. And Elton John says, "My biggest fear is stigma against LGBT people by religion and others in these countries in Africa." I wish he'd turned to Rick Warren and said, "By you idiot, because you're over there lobbying for all these anti-gay laws."
Ignorance and stigma are huge problems. And look at the rural epidemic in Indiana, which is fueled by sharing needles for this drug called Opana, which is a street painkiller. People are afraid to seek help at local clinics.
Yes.
And one of them said, who got it, "I thought it was just a homosexual disease." I mean, in 2015.
Yeah, it's terrible. Entertainment news.
Duck Dynasty the Musical is dead in Las Vegas.
Hallelujah.
It opened April 15th to lukewarm reviews. It's closing May 17th, way ahead of when it was supposed to be. The creators are still trying to bring this trash elsewhere. It's directed by Jeff Calhoun, who did Newsies.
Congratulations to a couple of our viewers in Los Angeles, Richard and Stephen Simone Friedland. They showed up on the Kiss Cam at Dodger Stadium. Roll that tape.
If you can.
They believe it was the first time that a gay couple were featured on the Kiss Cam.
At Dodger Stadium.
Yeah.
So you see a lot of straight couples kissing. People approach you apparently beforehand, before they're going to put you on the cam.
Although sometimes they'll put up 2 men or 2 women and sort of try to embarrass them as if they were a couple.
So everybody's making out on
Yeah.
camera and this and that, and we got it with.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
some
it's
people are really going at it there. Here are our buddies. There
Yeah.
they are.
A very mild
and the
change.
crowd went wild. They got the biggest cheer.
Yes, they did. They've been together for 19 years. They were married in 2013.
So we saw
Congratulations.
the Kander and Ebb musical, The Visit, based on the Dürrenmatt play. It's a dark tale with. Now, how'd you like it, Ann?
Terrible.
Chita Rivera is kind of amazing at 83, and she gets an extended ovation just for making her entrance, but it really doesn't quite capture the sinisterness of
Terrible.
the play.
Can you give us a quick look at Something Rotten?
Something Rotten got raves, except for the New York Times, and it's a farce about the competitors of Shakespeare, played by Christian Borle. But the problem is the guy I have on the camera. He's a Puritan moralist. He in the play. Now, instead of sort of giving you this little joke about the fact that he's really a right winger who's gay. It's one extended fag joke that goes on throughout the whole thing. And I know for a fact that that's not the way the role was conceived. So I was very offended by that, and I think it's cheap.
Absolutely. Now, some years ago, there was a beautiful lesbian opera produced called Patience and Sarah. Had a run at a festival here, and they're going to do a performance of Act 2 at the LGBT Center on June 26th. I highly recommend it. I also want to recommend this Saturday, May 9th, the film regarding Susan Sontag, the documentary, is going to be shown at the center.
I watched that on
6
HBO.
o'clock, yep. But they're going to bring in the filmmaker for a Q&A. They're going to have cocktails and a reception, all this sponsored by New Fest. The LGBT Film Festival. That's this Saturday at 6 p.m. at the center. And do you ever watch Andy Cohen's Watch What Happens Live show at 11 p.m.?
No.
Because he doesn't watch Bravo.
Not much.
Candace Bergen was on this week. And Andy, with guests who are on for the first time, he does a little thing called Plead the Fifth, where he asks them 3 questions.
Yeah, I've seen his show.
Okay. So clearly he knows that there are a lot of rumors about Candace Bergen having affairs with women. And he has a standard question he asks a lot of his guests. Have you ever taken a swim in the lady pond? He asks women. Or men, have you ever taken a swim in the man pond?
Oh, this sounds like the Hampstead Heath.
Yeah, well, most people are just very casual and either say yes or no, and some of the answers are surprising, but it's always cute. But Candace Bergen, who is rumored to be a lesbian, Andy's clearly very nervous asking her. He says, have you ever taken a swim in the lady pond? And she goes, no! I thought, you are a liar, Candace Bergen.
Well, when Ann asked this question of Liz Holtzman, who was the city comptroller, she said, I don't have to answer. This meeting is over.
I did not ask her the question.
I know. Well,
I just referred to her as a lesbian.
You just said, we've
There's a
heard these
difference.
stories. How should we address them
Yeah.
when we hear these questions?
Yeah. Whatever. That's enough for this week. We'll be back next week. And check out Dr. Christopher Barley's organizational website, cheetah.org, CITTA.org.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Thanks for watching.